This is Martin Rooney, founder and head coach of Training for Warriors.
During my world travels, I've had the opportunity to meet and learn from some of the most interesting and successful people from all walks of life.
On this podcast,
those same people will be sharing their secrets of success with you.
Join me as we go
into the roar. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Into the Roar. This is your host, Martin Rooney, and this is another mini-sode which I think has the potential to change your life. Now, as all mini-sodes, this one comes compliments of an email I received at intotheroarshow@gmail.com, and it goes just like this. It says, "Hi, Martin. Firstly, great work on the podcast. I'm really enjoying it. Could you do a mini episode about your career change from being a physical therapist, which ultimately led to TFW, the obstacles and challenges you overcame, how you knew you were on the right path, and maybe some of the fears and doubts you encountered, and what was your why for doing so? Thanks for sharing, and it'll help me navigate my own steps of a career change at this moment." I want to remind everybody that these questions, hey, I thrive on them. They make me better, and thanks for the interest in that. But I think that concept of a career change, I think the concept today that we're going to discuss of what success really is or how it should be considered could be some of the most important stuff you hear. And if you are listening to this right now, on your way to work, if you're commuting, if you're in a car, if you're sitting back, and this has been something that you've been thinking about, I hope that my story in some way helps you, because I know it was one of the most difficult challenges I ever had. Now, before I talk about this change, I want to share this. Tomorrow, I will be getting on a plane. I will be flying to the Northeast. I will be performing my Coaching Greatness live event, my coaching mentorship, and I'm going to have 60 or 70 people there. Many of them I haven't met, and I cannot wait to get there. Now, you might be saying to yourself, whoa, that sounds a little scary. You're flying up, meeting people you don't know, having to present all day, public speak. I get it. To some people, that might be scary. But why I told that story is that it's exactly what I am supposed to be doing. And I want to talk about today the career change I made, the experiences that I went through learning what it was I should be doing and shouldn't be doing with my life, that hopefully it can help you to find exactly what you should be doing too. So I want to talk about this, I guess, as I flesh it out in terms of moments in my life. And as you've already heard, I was an orthopedic therapist, physical therapist for a number of years. Depending on what country you're from, you might call it a physio. But I went to undergraduate college. I went to undergraduate college at Furman University in South Carolina. I was a track and field athlete there, and I received my degree in exercise science. And that should have told me right there that I was very interested in exercise. It's what I wanted to study. That's one big reason I went to that university versus a few of the others that I was accepted in that didn't have that I would have had to have majored in biology. And as I was going through my education and surrounding with sports was my life. I loved being in the gym. I had been a personal trainer before. But when I said I wanted to get involved in fitness, everybody kept saying the same thing, and this is important. They kept saying, it's not a real job. It's not a real job, which I think is pretty interesting that today I consider what I do a real job, but I listened to what the world said. And instead, I went to the Medical University of South Carolina after that. I got my degree in physical therapy, and I got my master's degree in health sciences at the same time. But now looking back, the reason I did it, right? The reason I became a physical therapist, it wasn't because I was passionate about physical therapy. It wasn't even because I knew anything about physical therapy. I did it because people around me, my parents, friends, my teachers, they all said, you should be a physical therapist. You'd be great at that. It's a budding industry. People are going to make a lot of money. It's harder to get into that right now than medical school for being a doctor. And I took that advice. And I took that advice And I will say this, I enjoyed the education. I would never trade what I learned about anatomy and physiology and pathophysiology and just rehabbing the body. It's been so integral to what I've used in my training over the years. But once I graduated and I started logging hours in my internships and my residencies, I started to see that, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This isn't really revolving around sports or athletics or fitness. I'm spending a lot of my time doing things I'm not that interested in. Not only some of the cases that I was dealing with, whether it be workman's comp or maybe people that didn't want to get better, but spending hours and hours doing insurance paperwork. It was starting to wear me down. And when my bobsled career was over, I went back to New Jersey and became a physical therapist. And I started logging my hours. And I'll say this, I definitely, because I was the new guy in the facility, I got the worst hours. I was working Monday nights, Friday nights. I had Wednesday nights and then early Tuesday and Thursday. So it was my nights were taken up most of the week. I was going in late, but didn't really have a lot to do during the day on those other days because everybody I knew was working. And then I started seeing over 100 patients a week. It was 4 people an hour. And that came the next moment where my body started telling me something was wrong. And I'm throwing that out there because I want to see if it resonates with anybody. What I called it was the knot. I called it the knot, where I just kind of had this knot in my gut that just slowly started to form, and it slowly started to form at a specific time. It'd be kind of like Sunday nights. It started at Sunday nights and it would be like, oh man, Sunday's already kind of wearing down or winding down. And now, man, I'm going to have to get back up and then do that long commute. And there became, nothing I started to dread more than that alarm clock going off on Monday morning, right? And I don't know, it just seemed to always buzz too soon. And it was kind of, whether you want to say like right back to the grind, maybe like when people say that, oh, I'm going back to the grind. If you're going back to the grind, then it's something you probably don't like doing, right? That's not what somebody calls their life that they're passionate about. I will say that. I don't ever say now, which I will talk about. I don't ever say, oh, back to the grind. Got to fly and go speak. I'm really got to go grind. So maybe that might be a little clue right there. A couple of them is if you're having a knot in your gut on Sunday nights, or you've got to keep saying, I'm back to the grind, that probably are some indicators that maybe you're not doing what you should really be doing. But the signs then intensified. Then it didn't just become Sunday nights. Then it became Sunday, because I would wake up Sunday and know that, oh man, the weekend is almost over. And then it was like Friday nights. I was so wiped out because I worked the evenings. And by the time I finished my paperwork at 9 o'clock or 10 p.m., I didn't want to go do anything else. So I started just living for Saturday. And that's when I started coming up with this idea of a ratio. And I don't know if you want to call it, it'd be interesting. I called it the passion to work ratio. And, but you can come up with whatever idea you think for it. But I'm going to challenge you right now. What is your passion to work ratio right now? Now, see, mine was look what I just described. I got whittled down to a 1-to-6 ratio. I had Saturday where, whether it was mountain biking or training or whatever I was trying to do, whatever I was interested in it for those years that I worked as a therapist, it was like that Saturday was the day I was trying to fit it all in, just trying to get everything in that I could get done, because there were 6 days a week, if you're counting Sunday too, already being a little bit ruined, where I really wasn't doing what I wanted to do, quote unquote, I was grinding, right? And now I see it, that knot in my gut, whether it was my instinct or my psyche, it was telling me to do something different. Now, before I go any further, I don't want to give you the wrong impression about physical therapy. That is not the purpose here. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed watching people improve. And I think that's why you should be doing it, why you're doing what you're doing as a therapist. But the knot, what I want to get across is that knot was telling me that I was meant for something different. I wanted to use the knowledge that I had gained from therapy, but I wanted to do it in a different way. And I wanted to make a bigger impact. But I want to get across for sure too, the value of the relationships that I built with my therapist co-workers. I would not trade that for anything. I worked amongst some amazing men and women that I just had some incredible times. I was having incredible times with them. It's just ultimately it was the therapy itself and what I was doing during the day. That was the stuff that was wearing me down. And I want to get that across because, hey, I would never want to dissuade anybody from therapy. If therapy is your passion and that's what you want to do and you are so excited about it, then go for it. That's what this whole message is about today. But regardless if it's therapy or whatever it is you're doing, if you're getting that knot in your gut, if you feel like you're on the grind, then you're probably not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that is what the purpose is about. So this is not either an attack on therapy or to say that it isn't the thing to do. It just wasn't the thing exactly to do for me. And actually what I have said is in all my years since, I was always still doing physical therapy. I was just doing it on a different population, maybe a population that was a little bit healthier, right? And why was that not there? I don't know why you're getting yours, but if you dissect it, it'll start to give you the direction where you want to go. See, my knot was there because I missed the rush of fitness and sport. I had been a collegiate athlete. I had been on the U.S. bobsled team, and sport was just what I was chasing. Then I got involved in jiu-jitsu with Renzo Gracie and the Gracie family. I was doing everything was telling me that was when I felt the best about myself. My body was telling me it was built for action, not to sit at a desk or to stand next to a table all day long. And it started to show me that you couldn't just be happy one day a week. And this is why I do the Into the Roar podcast. I'm hoping that this resonates with somebody. That if you're listening right now and you just said, you know what, I got the same ratio, Martin. My ratio is 1 to 6 and it isn't right. And I have that knot in my gut. And I need then what I'm hoping is if you're listening to me, then you do something about it. And I'm going to show you what I did and how it was the greatest move I ever made in my life. But as the question that I received, hey, there were obstacles and it was tough. And I'm hoping that this show makes it a little bit easier. And why? Because I know everybody wants to reach a high level in something. Like that's just one of the needs, right? I think we need to be around people. I think we need to be loved. But we need to reach a high level of mastery in something. And if you're doing a job that you don't love and you're not passionate about, that probably isn't gonna happen. But if you have aligned your passion and your purpose and make that your vocation, as I have now, I promise you this, the magic will happen. You will have boundless energy. You will be on fire. You won't be tired. And you'll get the question that I get all the time. How do you do it? That's the other one I get a lot. How do you do it, Martin? How do you do it? How do I do it? Because I love what I'm doing. And if you love what you're doing and there's no grind and no knot, you'd be amazed what is possible. So I want to share this part too. Hey, my body was telling me. And my body was telling me for years. I'd love to be able to say, the minute I started feeling like this, I just went in, I took action, changed my life. And actually, that's not what happened. Years went by of that knot in my gut, and a couple of things happened. One, I started to have some conversations with one of my coworkers. His name was Jim. And man, this guy was awesome. He was and my boss too, Larry. They were great mentors to me. And but in particular, one night, because I kept throwing out these little signs, like, wow, Jim, what's it like? I mean, because Jim was much older and ahead of me at that point. He'd been almost 15, 20 years in where I only had a couple under my belt. He had his family, his kids. And I was just throwing out there, like, is there more? Could I do something more? And I'll never forget. He did this little, because he was a really funny guy. And he sat in these chairs where we would be filling out paperwork at the end of the night, hours after everybody had left. And he just used it like a car and he just rolled it up to the table and made like a skidding noise. It was like, "Arr!" And then he turned to me and he said, "Hey, been here 20 years. And that's all he had to say. That's all he had to say. And I got it. That like what he was saying is, hey man, I don't have a bad life. I have a good life and I love my family and he got to do things, but hey, this is where he's been and he's still there in 20 years. So he was throwing out to me, do I want to be that same guy 20 years from now? And immediately I knew the answer. I didn't. And what put it over the top, because even then I still didn't do anything about it. But the piece that I haven't let in yet is, which I will never let happen to myself again, is I was also doing an hour commute one way. Now, we were living, not too far outside of New York City. We were in New Jersey. The traffic was awful. And every morning I would get up, or every day when I would drive to work, and I would sit in traffic. And I would be so stressed every time before I even got to work because, and it's pretty interesting. I always made it. And no matter how much I tried to tell myself, hey, Martin, you always make it. Don't worry this day. But I'd always make it by the skin of my teeth. I'd be a nervous wreck. It just stressed out. And by the way, that hour each way was 17 miles. So that puts into perspective how fast the maximum speed was I was going, which was the average maximum speed was 17 miles an hour. So you would move, sit, hope to make a light. If you made a certain light, you'd make it in time. And every day that commute there and back was just wearing me down. But what I did, interestingly, before there were podcasts, is I used to listen, just like you might be listening now. I used to listen to motivational tapes and different authors and speakers. And that was what was keeping me going. I will say that it almost became that the commute, even though it was arduous, it was keeping me going because that was the one place I was learning some stuff I was interested in. And one winter, it's freezing. We're driving in, I'm driving in, and the radio breaks in my, 10-year-old Nissan Maxima, and it just breaks. And I'm sitting there in dead stop traffic, and it broke, and I'm just gripping the steering wheel, realizing this is not where I want my life to be. This is not what I envisioned for myself. I have not reached enough for what I wanted to do. I am not making the impact I want to make. I start doing the math of how many hours I am spending in the car every day. I'm doing the math on how many hours I'm sitting doing paperwork, jumping through hoops for insurance companies. And that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And I went in and I told my boss that I was going to be leaving. And I'll never forget, because I knew it was going to hurt them because of our relationship. And hey, because I'd always been a good worker and done my best. But I won't forget, he did it in such a great way. He just looked at me and he said, hey, man, I thought it would have happened sooner. I never saw you staying here forever. And I'm hoping that, number one, that if this is resonating with you out there and you're in a job right now, or maybe you're sitting in your car in that commute, that maybe you have that same revelation that there might be something more. But here's what I'm going to let you know. It's like so scary. It's like so scary to say that this is what you want to do to somebody and then take the step. But then you know what? Those people are probably going to tell you, yeah, I was probably expecting that a long time ago. And that was the piece where I was like, man, then what was I doing? And thank goodness I didn't go another 20 years. But then came the real challenge. See, telling my boss was tough. Coming home and telling my parents, because by the way, I was still living at home then, because from all the promised land of how much money you were supposed to be making as a therapist, I wasn't. It was very difficult to have my own place where I was. So I came home and told my parents that I was no longer going to be a therapist. And interestingly enough, I had met Bill Parisi. We had been training together because I was just so interested in fitness. He said, man, I need a guy like you. And this business, it's going to be something, it's going to go. So I went home and told my parents I had quit. I was going to work with this guy with a van that was going to drive around and make kids faster. And that I was going to get a place up, hour and a half away and stay in the basement of a guy's house that I had met through season jet tickets that I had, and I'll never forget my parents. They pretty much said no. They were like, no, you can't do this. This is crazy. Again, I heard it again. It's not a real job like I talked about. Strength training for girls or kids, you're going to stunt their growth. You're out of your mind. You're going to go broke. And it was just, and everybody I knew, this wasn't just my parents, this was my friends too. Everybody was trying to stop me. And I'm throwing that out there too, because I think whenever you really go for your dreams, there's going to be a bunch of people out there that are going to try to stop you. They're going to try to stop you maybe because they never reached theirs. But that shouldn't be the reason to stop you. Because I will say this, being safe in life can sometimes lead to being sorry later, right? I told you about my friend. I don't know if he was ever saying safe or sorry because I think the guy lived a great life. But the whole thing is, if you didn't go for everything you could go for and at least take a shot, then you're probably going to be sorry later. And I wasn't going to let that happen. And every one of these steps too, I want you to know, every one of these steps, there was only like more energy that I got and more momentum. It was like I was figuring out that's not what I wanted to do. I was figuring out that maybe there was something else. Then once I knew what the something else was, then I figured out I had to, here are the steps that I had to take to start making that happen. And then when I made what I called a leap, when I officially quit, then everything changed. See, it wasn't fear anymore. I was attacking. I was reading every book and devouring everything I could in the subjects that I really loved. I was making myself the best I could be at what I was doing. And I describe it for anyone that, if you need an analogy, it was like jumping out of a plane, right? It's kind of like the terrifying part's the jump. But once you're out, you're going. Once you're out, you're going and there's no going back. So it's just like, man, react, respond, and do something about it. And that jump, that leap that day, now looking back 20 years, I mean, it's been 20 years. It was the best thing I ever did because there would be no Into the Roar podcast. There would be no Training for Warriors. There wouldn't be millions of kids that have been impacted by the Precy Speed School, my work, coaches that have changed. See, now the books that I've written, none of that would have happened. And man, I wouldn't have made the impact. But I wonder sometimes at night, what would that not have done to me, right? Like, 20 years later, would I even have survived it? So after that, things have just always continued to snowball, but it snowballed because I went after my passion. I listened to my body. And now I'm going to give you a few things. Because remember, one thing is the story, and if it resonates, you take it where you take it. But here's a little checklist, right? I want to give you a little checklist to examine your current situation, where you're at, where your life's at. What do you think? And so here, to see, it's almost a little bit of a review from what happened to me. So number one, hey, do you count the minutes until you finish work on Friday? Or do you even say, thank God it's Friday? See, if you say TGIF, that should be telling you something, that it's like you can't be more excited to not be doing what you're doing. How about this one? Is Saturday the big day you look forward to, and it's like because you can finally do the thing you really love to do, right? Is that the day you really get to do the thing you're passionate about? And are you wishing Sunday's like 34 hours instead of 24 hours? Like I was, just wishing it was longer, right? And is Monday, see, look at those days of the week. Is Friday the day you can't wait till work's over? Is Saturday the day you can't wait for it because you do what you love to do? Is Sunday you wish it was longer because it's too short because you got to get to Monday, right? To Monday to hear the most difficult sound, which is your alarm clock. And then another one, how about Wednesday? Is Wednesday hump day? Is it like, oh, got to get over the hump. Now the week's almost halfway over. And I'm grinding. If these are the ways that you're describing your week, it's time to listen. And it's time to listen to yourself. Because if your real passion doesn't have much to do with your work, man, then like I'm telling you that there's a better way and there's something else that you might need to be doing. So going along with that, some other questions. Hey, do you have the knot in your stomach? Right? Take a moment. Hey, truthfully answer that in your head right now. If you're nodding up and down, see, because I get it. You could be afraid to say that. It's scary to say that, yeah, I got a knot in my gut, because if you admit it, then you need to start making a change. There's things that are going to have to happen, right? But if you don't, don't worry about if you do. Ask that question. Honestly, worry about what if you don't, right? Which is where I was too. So if your body's telling you something, it's time to start listening. And hey, there's some people around you maybe trying to keep you from that passion, right? Do you have people that you surrounded yourself with supportive people? Have you ever had some of these people tell you, hey man, this is something you should be doing. You'd be really good at this, right? And ultimately, a couple of questions for you. What is that passion to work ratio? What's yours right now? Honestly answer it. Because I will say this, there's always going to be stuff you don't enjoy doing. There's still things I have to do. I'll be honest, learning how to do the podcast and setting all this stuff up, it was not easy. There were things I wish I didn't have to do, but I love doing this. And I love building my organization, and I love receiving emails from people in Training for Warriors from at the almost 300 facilities around the world of their lives being changed and getting to travel and meet these people and present. I mean, I love it, right? And so my passion to work ratio is much, much higher. And ultimately, maybe the final question I have for you is, if you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing? And I know you might have just gotten a smile on your face and you might have said, hey, Martin, I'd be sitting on a beach, baby. Or, oh, man, I'd have this car and this house and this stuff. And I just want to share a few things. I've worked with some very, very successful, so let's go over that word, very successful people in the world. And every one of them that had more money than they needed, they didn't sit on a beach or lay around and do nothing. They actually did more. And they actually discovered what their real passion was, and that is what they did. They actually became more valuable to the world than less, right? And I want to give you a few little tips I got from them. Number one, 24 hours is a long time to have nothing to do. And another one I heard that always resonated with me was, you can only play so much golf, right? You can only sit on a beach for so long with nothing to do. So letting you know that, what would you do if you had all the money already? What would you be doing? What charities would you start? What causes would you go after? What industries would you create or revolutionize? What would you be passionate about? These are the questions that should set your heart on fire and tell you where you really should go. And if you are not doing those things right now, it's time to start figuring out the steps to do it. Because I said I met these successful people, right? Well, I want to define that a little bit. See, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Successful, it's not about being rich. I think it's first about untying that knot and being happy. And if I were to describe it, see, whenever you hear it, the successful people of the world, they don't say success is wealth, right? It's loving what you do and doing that with people that you love in a place that you really like to be. So listen to that one. Challenge yourself on that one. Do you love what you do, and you do those things with people that you love in a place that you really love to be? Because if you're doing that, it doesn't matter what it says in the bank account. You're gonna lead a really, really successful life. But ultimately, I think it starts with a lot of the stuff that we went over. And it's time to ask yourself some of these really, really important questions. And if that knot is there as you're listening, I'm begging you, the best way you can thank me for the Into the Roar podcast is not writing in and saying, wow, this is really great. You helped me out. No, hey, you know what? Untie the knot. Start figuring out, taking the steps, talk it out with somebody you know, start sharing your feelings. The answers and the steps will start appearing just like it did for me. And why I'm so passionate about it today is because if there's anything I wish I could have had, maybe I wish I had those 3 years back, right? There were 3 years where I kind of really spent it knotted up, not doing what I loved doing, and I knew it. And now understanding how valuable time is, maybe I wish I could have had some of that back. And if this podcast in any way helps anybody to do that, I will be not only grateful, but you can write in and tell me about it at the intotheroarshow@gmail.com email. And hey, I never know how these are going to go, but I hope you enjoyed it as much as I just did sharing it. But more importantly, that you do something with it. So thanks. And again, if you think anybody needs this message, if you know somebody that needs this message, share it. Tell them about the Into the Roar show, or hey, rate and review the show for me, please. This is how we can spread this message. I know there has been so much great information shared on this show, but the only way it helps somebody is if they hear it. So if you've got somebody that needs it, share it with them. And I look forward to the next time we go into the Roar.